DJ Dewey Rock on the track.
Welcome to eMERS Podcast 360. I'm your host, Maserati. We want to thank you for tuning in. No matter where you are in this metaverse world, we're going to continue to bring you the best quality content and formula that we know how. We want to thank you for all the likes, shares, and subscriptions on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and YouTube thus far. This is being brought to you by Burchell Family Insurance Agency and Involved Social and Civic Club, where we understand the social and civic need. Hey, we want to thank you once again for tuning in out there. We have a very special guest. We got a great show. It's Sunday Beyond the Game with one of our legendary coaches and educators. She was born in Morehouse Parish. She's the eldest of 6 siblings, one of those siblings being current mayor, Miss Betty Olive. She's a graduate of Grambling State University in '69, where she graduated with a degree in social studies and physical education, and she went on to receive a master's degree in sports administration and master's of plus 30 hours at Northeast Louisiana University. Her state certifications include teacher, principal, supervisor, and superintendent. Her teaching degree and terms began in 1969 in Ouachita Parish as a teacher at West Monroe High School, where she later on joined the Morehouse Parish team, where she was an educator for several years for different schools, where she went on to become principal of Carver Elementary. Check this out. In 1999 into 2000, during that term, she was principal both at Carver and H.V. Adams at the same time. In October of 15, the Morehouse Parish School Board appointed her as superintendent for the Morehouse Parish School System, where she stayed until 2018, where she retired. She's married to Mr. Dave Sellers, where they have 2 children, Shadunlin, Frederick, and the proud grandparents of 4 grandchildren. But she's being honored today. She is known for being the very first head coach of football in the state of Louisiana. She has several accolades beyond the coaching and beyond the game. She's the Superintendent Award recipient for the Outstanding Achievement, Louisiana Department of Education Award for Steady Academic and Scholastic Growth, member and officer of the Northeast Louisiana Supervisors Association, member of the Louisiana Association of School Executives, and she's the co-founder of the Northeast Louisiana Consortium and proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you our own, and please listen in, to a legend, a pioneer, our own in Louisiana, Coach Miss Hazel Sellers. How you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great, Mr. Odom. It's good to be with you this afternoon.
Yes, ma'am. We're glad that you could join us, and that's quite a resume, Miss Sellers. It could be a mini book, a little pamphlet. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. After attending church this morning and having lunch, I'm ready to answer any questions that you might have.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're so proud and honored to have you here, looking at the story behind you, kind of inform the people about Miss Hazel Sellers and how you grew up as a little girl.
I grew up in Morehouse on the Barnaby. With my mother and stepfather and my other siblings. And, of course, you know, in those days it was cotton time and picked and hoed cotton. And then I attended Johnson Elementary School in Morehouse on the Barnaby. And later, after the 8th grade, I attended Union High School, which later on became Delta, for 2 years. And then I moved to Monroe, where I attended Carroll High School and graduated in 1964.
Yes, ma'am. That's something I forgot to mention, that you were a graduate of Carroll High School. You say you went there to live with your aunt. How was that experience moving from Delta to Carroll at such a young age?
Well, it was an experience, and it was an eye-opener, and there were lots of things that were different in the city from those that were at Union High School, which was a rural school. And one of them notably was that I skipped the year between typing classes, so I never really had a formal education when it came to typing, because it was 10th grade at Carroll and 11th grade at Union High, and I changed schools between the 10th and 11th grade. So, but I was accepted at Carroll, but I was still shy because I just wasn't used to all of the attention.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You went on and you graduated from Carroll, and you went on to Grambling State University, where you graduated and got your bachelor's and your master's degree. And that's kind of lead us up to who you are. But share with us about the experience of you attending Grambling State University during that time.
It was Grambling College at that time, and everything was, as you know, it wasn't very expensive, but then I guess for economics at that time, and people, when it came to their purses and pocketbooks, my great aunt, it was still a large chunk of money, even though it's very small by today's standards. And I went on to get a job at Grambling because I needed to help out with my tuition. And so I worked there for 3.5 years in the education department as a student worker. And I went on later to get my master's degree in sports administration. And later I got my degree at ULM, which was Northeast at that time, in educational leadership.
Yes, ma'am. And we look that you went on and you started your teaching career in your term with your teaching profession in 1969 in Ouachita, where you were there for a couple of years. Ma'am?
I was there for 1 year.
Okay.
At West Monroe High School.
Yes, ma'am.
And then I applied under Mr. L.A. Newt when he was supervisor for Morehouse Parish Schools. I applied for a job in Morehouse Parish, and I got accepted to teach at Bonita Junior High School.
Okay.
And that's where I started my Morehouse career.
Okay. You know, Ms. Sellers, that's the part that we want to get into, and we're going to take a short intermission. And when we come back, we're going to get into what we're honoring you today for here at eMERS 360. We're honoring you on our wall of fame for your accomplishments and your accolades as being the first female head coach of football in the state of Louisiana. And when we come back, we're going to still be with Miss Hazel Sellers, Coach Hazel Sellers, when we return after this intermission. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're here with legendary and our own legend and Wall of Famer and pioneer and trendsetter, Miss Hazel Sellers, the first head coach of men's football in the state of Louisiana. And that's why we're here today, Miss Sellers. Let's go back in time. Let's go back to you coaching junior high football for the Colliston Cougars and the different junior highs you was with back then. Let's talk about that, Miss Sellers.
Okay. I was at Bonita Elementary School for 8 years, and in 1978, after driving 50 miles every day going one way, to work, and coming back another 50 miles, I decided to ask for a transfer, and I went to the elementary supervisor, and I asked if I could move. And so they said they had a position open at Collinston Junior High School, but as a social studies teacher, the social studies teacher normally was also the physical education teacher, because we majored in social studies and physical education. And so I had that accreditation, so I was offered the job. And so Miss Elva Humphreys, as superintendent, offered me the job. And she said if she could be the first woman superintendent in Morehouse Parish, she knew that I could handle being the first female head coach. And so with that, I took that job, and so that I could be closer to home. And I accepted the challenge. And so that's how it ended up being. I was head coach at Collinston Junior High School for football, girls and boys basketball, girls and boys track.
Wow. Did you have assistant Coach Sellers?
What did you say?
Did you have an assistant coach?
No, I did not have an assistant. However, I did have former players who would, after school, come by and help out with different activities with our boys, Albert Tippett and Clifton Jackson, and a community leader who was very, very strong and wanted to help was Snoop Lee. And so he came out on every afternoon that we had practice, and we were able to utilize their help. So that was the help that I had.
Right. Now, Ms. Sellers, let's get into this. Not only was it a male-dominated sport and profession and culture, how were you, first of all, accepted by your male counterparts as being a female coach in football?
Well, it started out just they wanted to make a joke out of it a little bit, because when we had to run the chains and the down boxes for Delta High School football games, because the junior high school coaches had to do that, we had that task. It would be comments after a game. And I heard Coach Phillips say one afternoon to Coach Crease, they were talking about the game that I had won, and they said she didn't even realize that she had won. She said, "Look at what I found." And so it was a laugh on their part. However, I just ignored it, and I just kept on doing what I needed to do with my team, and we had some successes.
Right. You know, how during that time, you know, that was unheard of, Coach Miss Sellers. You're a trendsetter, and you did some things. You did a thing that's probably now has become a fad and a facet. Women coaching, women being officials. But how were you able to reach those young men back then during that time? What was your strategy?
My strategy, number one, well, I'm going to give you a little bit of a story coming up to that. When I first became the head coach, I had a call meeting with all football players to meet on a Sunday afternoon in the social studies classroom. And they had never met me. My husband went up with me to Collinston, and we were sitting there as the boys came into the room and sat down. They didn't know who I was and who my husband was. They just knew we were there, and they thought that it was my husband who was the head coach. And so when it was time for the meeting to start, I stood up and I began to talk, and I said, I'm your new head coach. I'm Hazel, Mrs. Hazel Sellers, Coach Sellers to you. And I will be your next head coach after Coach Bronson. He's not returning. And they were just shocked. But I said, anybody who does not want to play for a woman, you have my permission to leave now. You're excused. And they all remained seated, and they said, we just want to play football, miss. We just want to play football. And so we'll pay for you. And so that was the way that got started. And so I had a name that they called me, and it was Miss, but they also called me Coach sometimes. And it was an of respect, because I first told them, I'm going to respect you, and I expect that same type of respect in return. And so in doing that, I always had their respect.
Right.
And we work from that point of view, me respecting them, because a lot of times people think that students or children should always respect adults, and adults don't have to respect them, but you have to start out with a mutual respect.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Now, once you kind of got their attention and they started kind of understanding that you were their coach.
Right.
How did you approach the game, and how did you scout your talent, being that you never had played the game, or you didn't play sports in high school, but you went on and got a sports administration degree, so you made your degree work for you, and you started off doing it early. What was your approach in your coaching strategy to get them to buy into your system?
Well, see, what happened was, when I first stepped into college and junior high school, there was a team already there. Coach Bronson had left the team. And so I had boys who already had some skills. And I also looked down into the 4th and 5th grade for students boys who looked like they had talent. And so I started to bring them along to learn the game, to learn the system and how things work. And when it comes to little bitty fellas, you don't do a whole lot with them, except you teach them the basics. Also, when it came to the bigger boys, we didn't win that first year. I just want to say this up front. We didn't win that first year. I had to change my philosophy and the way that I thought about the game. And so we did lots of practice and lots of afternoons. We worked out and did what we hit the sled, jogging, and that day with bull ring. We did a whole bunch of things. And so it was a matter of, and you say, how did I find talent? Then when you stand and look in the halls, or you look at a child in the classroom, or you look at a boy, you pretty much tell those that have that potential and that work ethic and some skills that you notice when it comes to running and jumping, because I taught physical education too, to the boys and to the girls. So I was able to see at that point who was a possibility.
Yes, ma'am. You know, you get the talent, you start coaching, like you say, you didn't win your first year, then you continue on and you come back. What was the ultimate thing? Were you a natural once you got started, or did you have to do a lot of film studying, watch a lot of football, or did it just kind of come natural to you, Coach Sellers?
Well, I had watched the game, and I was watching. Before I became head coach, it was on television, and so I was able to watch football on television. And I watched high school games and college games, and at Grambling I had been able to observe. And so I wasn't a natural, of course not. I never played the game. But I also, my husband would talk about it a lot. And so I just incorporated a whole bunch of ideas and things into my philosophy and what I did on a day-to-day basis, and to bring things to where they were when I was finally at a point of winning.
Right. Now, Ms. Sellers, you're getting into the mode. Kind of tell us about what's going through your mind as you see that you're starting to get the hang of it, and the kids are starting to win, and the boys are starting to respect you as being a prominent coach. Your other male counterparts are starting to look up to you. What was going through your mind at this time?
It was I just continued what I was doing. And what was going through my mind is that we can win. We can continue to win. We could be a force to be reckoned with here at Collinston Junior High School. So if we work hard and continue to work hard and to do those things which it took to win, we could have our names in the paper in a positive light rather than on a losing end. And so it was just a matter of working with the football players, getting them to believe in themselves, that they could do it, that they could be what I thought they could be. See, it's one thing to think it about somebody, but it's another to get them to think it about themselves. And so while they were learning and beginning to feel that they could do it, I was also learning and beginning to feel that I could help them to do that.
Right. Did you think your nurturing and your mothering nature, do you think that aided you and was able to help reach them more on a more sensitive level?
That I do. I think, you don't always have to, as I said, be harsh, but you have to be firm with students, with the football players. You don't have to be harsh. I hear so many people who curse them out, and in my day back then, you could hear about coaches who would do a lot of physical things when it came to getting them to do what they wanted them to do. But I did not believe in doing it that way to a large degree. What I believe is that you told them what you wanted them to do, you practiced what you expected, and then you got out there and you executed it. And so if they did not do what I had wanted them to do, then the consequences were we just practiced more. And we continued to practice that which was deficient.
Right. Mm-hmm. Ms. Sellers, we're going to take another intermission. And when we come back, we want you to kind of remember the ones you can, some of the players that you had back then and some of the ones that maybe went to college and did other phenomenal things with their life when we come back after this intermission. We'll be right back with Coach Sellers, superintendent, teacher, mother, grandmother, legend, Louisiana, when we return after this intermission. Welcome back. This portion of the show is being brought to you by Northeast Louisiana Counseling of Bastrop, Louisiana. We're still here with legendary coach, superintendent, teacher, so many accolades, you can't name them all, but she's being honored today for being the first female head coach of football in the state of Louisiana, Morehouse of Parish zone, Coach Miss Hazel Sellers. Coach, before we went to the intermission, we were asking you, can you kind of go back and tell us about some of the players that you had back then and what you know about them now?
Well, Warren, I can tell you, I spoke with Warren C. about last year. He lives in Fort Worth, the Fort Worth area, and he's but he coaches at his school. But he went on to Louisiana Tech University, and he played on the football team. He played on first string at Louisiana Tech. I had other players, Milton Williams, who still lives in Bastrop, and Tony Powell. They're out there. When it comes to, we had Willie Ray Larkin and all of those boys. Tracy Kennedy, Jimmy C was one. They all went. Jimmy C works, I believe, somewhere at the plant in Sterlington, and he's an engineer. So we've had many players, and when it came to the girls, I can name a whole bunch of them also. There's Amelia Lee and Lori Barfield and Ellen Foster, and just to name a few. And these are students who, and some of them were scholar athletes also. Warren C. was a junior Beta Club and Beta Club member. Sandra Lee, Daryl Fields, Lori Barfield, Jennifer Williams. They were all, they wanted to be, as we say, they were student athletes. They worked for Collinston, but Collinston worked for them. And they were very productive students and strong students. And I just want to say to them, I want to thank them because they made me who I am today.
Yes,
especially with this honor that you're giving me at this moment.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sellers, I'm just sitting here listening. I'm steady reading and looking at your pictures and different things, and know that you've been doing this 50 plus years. Not only have you been an educator, you've been an administrator, and then you ended up being the superintendent, which we'll get into later. But, just to know that you were doing some Eddie Robinson type stuff back then on your own scale at a junior high level, coaching football, boys and girls basketball, and track and field. Let's get into some of these championships. I know you told me you humble, and I know you got a sweet spirit. You don't like to put it in nobody's face, but I put them pictures on Facebook of that hardware. Let's talk about these championships you was winning once you started to get the hang of things, Coach Sellers.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was just when my first year, basketball was my dominant sport. We won when it came to the boys with Clarence Garrison and all of them, and Willie C. We won the championship. And Coach Crease was the premier coach in when I went into the Delta League. That was the league we played in, and to beat Coach Crease was a feat unto itself. And so when we did that, it was a great feeling. And so, but in football, our first year we did not win. As a matter of fact, we were last in the league. And a comment was made, and I'm going to say this and that to show you how humble I am. At halftime at one of our games, what really opened my eyes was the fact that Mr. Jackson, Andrew Jackson, came to the fence where we were all sitting and talking at halftime. And he said, Coach, let me say this. He said, when you get through, I want you to come over to my car, and in the trunk, I got some dresses for these guys. And so that really opened my eyes. That really made me it upset me to a degree, but it motivated me to a larger degree because I did not want that stigma. And so the next day, we went with a different type of spirit. The boys were really, they were angry, but then they were determined, as I was. And so we hit the sled much harder, and we worked much harder on all of our skills. And so the next game we tied, but then the season was over, and so the second season we tied, the third season, we tied in the Delta League with Morehouse. And then the fourth and fifth season, we took the Delta League.
Wow.
And then we the seventh year, we tied. We did all right. But then the last year, we had fourth and fifth graders, a lot of them on the team. And so the boys were so small that we just couldn't win. But we put our heart in it, and we did the best we could.
Right. And you did that with football, but at the same time, you were coming right back after football season, going up in the gym, coaching girls and boys basketball, and still, Miss Sellers, I'm going to say it, still kicking they behind. Let's talk about this basketball team and what type of plays and formations you're running in basketball.
Oh, well, don't ask me. It's been a while now. But I just want to say this. What we did was, we maximized our time in the gym because, having boys and girls, you just couldn't have a day for boys and a day for girls, or you'd just be wearing yourself out. So we practiced at the same time. And a lot of times it was boys against girls and girls. And that practicing against the boys made the girls a whole lot stronger. And it made them a force to be reckoned with in the Delta League. And my boys, or our boys, or the boys, as we want to say, they were just determined that they were just going to beat the girls, and beating the girls, they wanted to beat everybody else in the Delta League. And of course, boys in Morehouse would talk with the boys in Collinston, and they'd say little things, and so that was motivation in itself. And so we'd go into the gym with a determination that we wanted to win. But first, we wanted to make sure we practiced and got our skills sharpened every time we practice and get the most out of every practice. And play as a team rather than as an individual. And we didn't tolerate ball hawking, as they want to call it. We talked about team play. And as a result, we could win. I had to set one of my best player the first year on the bench, not in a derogatory manner, but in a way that he understood. In that, when it was time to step out onto the floor, I just asked him to take a seat beside me, and he was just so surprised. I'm not going to call his name, but he was really surprised. And as time went along, he thought that I was going to put him out there every time I called for a substitution, and I didn't. We won the game, but I told him we either can win with you or win without you or lose without you, but we're going to play as a team. And from that point on, everybody got the message. And it was team play from then on.
Right. Ms. Sellers, I want to know, how were you able to, and where did you find the time, the energy? I know you were younger, but how did you find the time and the energy to never really get a break? You was coaching pretty much, you would say, 4 sports simultaneously. How did you find the energy?
Well, I found, as I said, I maximized my time. When it came to boys and girls, we all practiced at the same time, and a lot of times we competed against each other in order to gain strength and do strategies and get things accomplished. Finding a time at home, my husband was at Carroll, but I did have my mother who helped, with my children, and then they became school age, and so then they had their own things to do. So it was just a matter of planning and making sure that we maximized what time we did have, and I had to maximize my time in that regard.
Right. So over the time, you pretty much became a student of football, a student of basketball, and you was coaching track as well. When you look back on it, Coach Sellers, I understand that's something that you didn't have in mind, but it was really no choice. You went on to do it for 10 years. When you look back on it now and you it's all over with, what was your biggest accomplishment coaching during your era?
My biggest accomplishment, I think, was building young men and women to be successful and productive citizens. I always look at it that way. And I look at sports and academics or education in the same way. I was able to build bodies and minds to meet the challenge of competition, but I was able to help build them when it came to character, build them when it came to respecting each other, build them when it came to playing as a team. So whereas one doesn't have this skill, another one does, but the team as a whole can work to make things work to the good for all who's on that team. And when it comes to education, that is what I believe in: building the minds and building the bodies and building the character of young people. And I'm so proud that I was able to do that.
Yes, ma'am, and I'm honored that you came on the show and gave us this interview and letting the younger generation and some people my age, Miss Sellers, to be honest with you, we didn't know these things, and we didn't know a lot of these things about you. We just knew that you was an educator, but we didn't know the story and the legacy that you have and you have created for us. But when we come back after this intermission, we want to talk about your 50-plus years being an educator and your experience with that. You went beyond coaching, and you received some great accolades throughout your profession and your teaching and administrating career. When we come back, take us back through this 50-year journey of being an educator here and beyond in Morehouse Parish when we return. We'll be right back with Miss Coach, legendary Louisiana legend, Hazel Sellers, when we return. Welcome back. This portion of the show is being brought to you by Patrick Stewart, LLC, Putt Putt. Patrick Stewart, shout out to Putt Putt. We're still here with legendary Louisiana-owned Morehouse Parish finest, Coach Hazel Sellers. Miss Sellers, when we went to the intermission, you done broke it down about being a historian and being a legend with being the first female head coach in Louisiana. In football, you was coaching boys football, girls and boys basketball, and track and field, all simultaneously. You went on beyond that, beyond the coaching. You went back into strictly being a teacher, and then you started rising in the ranks in Morehouse Parish. Take us back on this 50-year journey, Coach Sellers.
Well, I give credit when it comes to the most influential people in my life to my teachers. At Johnson School, I had Mr. and Miss Blakely and Miss King, who was my second grade teacher. At Union High School, I had Miss Annie Fudge and Mr. Albert Smith. And I would be remiss not to mention my mother, who was instrumental in her upbringing. The way they encouraged me was that they set themselves as an example. And also, they said encouraging things to us. It was always trying to grow us as people and making us feel as students like we were people who were important. And so I have to say that and give them due diligence, because as I entered my career in education, I always looked at examples, and they gave a lot of themselves. And so as a result, I always gave 110% of myself, my time, my energy, my planning for the students of Morehouse Parish. And as I said, I worked at Bonita when I first came to Morehouse Parish for 8 years. And then I moved to Collinston, teaching social studies and reading and math and anything else that was, because I did most of it at Collinston Junior High School in the teaching part of my career. And I also went on to start, I left Collinston because they took the 7th and 8th grade and moved them to Delta, so I could not stay at an elementary school with my certification, so I had to move to Delta, where I worked for 1 year, and coaching girls basketball and teaching social studies and physical education. And then I moved to, became the first alternative education teacher in Morehouse Parish at Billy Rabin School, at Bastrop Junior High School, across from the old school board office in the basement. And I worked there for half a year. Then I went to Bastrop High. As I said, I'm the most migrant educator who's ever been in Morehouse Parish, because I've been in most of the schools. I worked at Bastrop High for 1 year in economics and sociology. And then I became principal of Carver Elementary School. And I worked there for 10 years with students. And as I say, growing minds, which is what I love to do. And I always started a junior beta club wherever I went, because I believe that even though kids may work and do, they are always motivated when they are rewarded for their work. And other children need to see examples of what they can be. And so I worked, had principal of Carver, and then I became principal, as you said, of 2 schools, H.V. Adams and Carver, my last year as principal. Then I became a superintendent for 16 years, a supervisor of elementary education for 16 years. And then I was able to, and fortunate enough, to be able to become interim superintendent, and followed by full superintendent for 2 years. So that's 50 years of what I have done, what was done. And I always say to all of the young people out there, they need to plan your work and work your plan. I had always wanted to teach for about 20 years. I said I was going to stay in the classroom for 20 years, and then I wanted to become a principal. So what you do, you have to ready yourself for the opportunity when it presents itself, and be ready to step through the door when the door does open. And then don't be afraid of a challenge. In the end, it will reveal what kind of metal you're made out of. So as an educator, that's 50 years for me.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Sellers, I want to ask you this about Morehouse Parish. You know, you look at the situation now, you're being 50 plus years educator. What have you seen is the most drastic change from when you were there up to now? You don't want to know 2018. I go back to 1978 when I became a principal. There have been many changes. The number of blacks in supervisory positions in Morehouse Parish did increase for quite some time. And for a time, there were many more black principals at best, and
black principals in Morehouse Parish, and then there are now, because the schools now, the number of schools has diminished, and I think we're down to something like 4 schools from being at 11 at one time. Also, for a time, there were many more Bastrop has had several black mayors since that time, since 1978. The population has dwindled, and as I said, the number of schools are reduced. And of course, they named, we have had several black mayors within that time frame. And you named a black man, first black man, as superintendent for Morehouse Parish Schools since 1978, along with my being in that position. So there have been many changes.
Right.
Some for the good and some not so good.
Right. You know, Ms. Sellers, just looking at it, you know, through a glass from your perspective, what do you think it would take to turn Bastrop around, Morehouse Parish back around, and regain the prominence you've seen for 30 plus years in Morehouse Parish?
It's going to take funding first. You'll have to be able to secure funding. The school system, and that's the one that I'm most familiar with. I try not to talk to that which I don't know. But the school system, I know when it comes to funding, the funding funding formula has changed, and the amount of monies that is given to Morehouse Parish schools is less. And also you have a competing school within the school system that's created some of the problems. However, you're going to have to have a mindset change when it comes to, I only know what I hear and what I see on the news. And the mindset when it comes to children who are not in school or who are in school and not doing what they need to do to be successful. I think you're going to have to work with the children to get them to see that the only way out of poverty, the only way out up, the only way up is through education. And they're going to have to be able to have that vision that they want to be able to help somebody to move up, and the only way to do that is to help themselves, and that's my firm belief.
Ms. Sellers, you have accomplished a lot of things, and you've been the first to do a lot of things. You just continued and you continued and you continued to reach for greater success. Before we let you go, what would you like to share from the heart with Morehouse Parish?
Morehouse Parish has given me a lot. It afforded me that which you talked about today, that which we discussed. And it afforded me the opportunity to work with all of the communities in Morehouse Parish. Bonita, it put out a lot of doctors and a lot of prominent people. Collinston, where parents worked diligently with their children and they wanted to be of help. Morehouse, and I haven't worked in Oak Ridge, but you had great parenting going on in those towns, and they wanted their children to succeed. When I came there in 1969, as when I was there prior to when I was a child, the parents wanted their children to grow up to be successful, productive people. And we're just going to have to get back to parents wanting that same thing for their children of today. And I know parents have to work, and children are sometimes children are left to their own devices, but we're going to have to figure out a way to help young people, especially our children of color, to know their worth and to think in the way that we thought that we could be better, we could do better, and we are better than what people think that we are.
Yes, ma'am. Miss Sellers, one last thing before we go. I want to end it with this. Tell us who your favorite football team is.
Well, I'm going to say this. I thought about it. It's the Saints right now, but I still look at the Pittsburgh Steelers. You know, their coach is one of my favorite people. And then you got GSU, but the Saints and GSU are really struggling right now. But I think they will come back. I do have season tickets to GSU's all of their home games, and so we're just waiting on them to rise above whatever their handicaps are now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And Miss Sellers, I want to let you know that we appreciate you for coming on, and we are honored, and we love you. And the things we talked about us contacting Louisiana Hall of Fame to get you inducted. And I want you people to hear this. We need to get on board. We need to help induct Miss Hazel Sellers into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame, right along with Mr. Kenny Nat and all the other greats that's been inducted into these Hall of Fames. Miss Sellers holds her own in that category. Miss Sellers, we appreciate you, love. We wish you the best on all your endeavors, and Morehouse Parish owes you a great gratitude, and we at eMERS 360 are grateful to give you your flowers today. And we love you, Miss Sellers. We appreciate you coming on, and we hope we can have you back real soon.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm your host, Miles. Go ahead, Miss Sellers.
And I love Morehouse Parish. That is why I stayed 50 years. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We love you, Miss Sellers. I'm your host, Maserati. This has been brought to you by Involve Social and Civic Club, where we understand the social and civic needs of love, learn, live, and laugh. Until next time, y'all stay involved, get encouraged, and most of all, y'all get immersed. We out of this thing.
And that's what we appreciate you doing, for stepping out, stepping on, trying to do things for the kids in the community. And we appreciate that. Even though I done moved away over in Arizona, but everything remains the same. Because we call it for a change.
Right.
And once you step back and start looking, as they say, get outside the box, with that third eye that you presented, it makes things that much better. And that brings it to the full circle, once again, 360.
Now if you've seen what I've seen, I know you extra the game. They're giving catch 20 to life over crumbs of cocaine. How could this happen to us?